تصويت الصفوف من إقامة الصلاة. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله الله Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Innal hamdalillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. Verily, all praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His help and support, and we seek His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil of our own selves and from our bad deeds. Whomsoever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And whomsoever Allah lets go astray, no one can guide. I declare that there is none worthy of being worshipped except Allah alone, and He has no partner. And I declare that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and messenger. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and upon his family and companions and those who follow him with ihsan until the last day. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah, we praise Allah for all of His blessings and in particular for making it possible for us to gather here this afternoon in Masjid Al-Hijrah in Sydney. And we have gathered here this afternoon, a small gathering, but alhamdulillah, we hope that it is a beneficial gathering, inshallah, in which we intend to discuss a little bit about Hajj. Yeah. So we have announced to our Jama'ah that we are having a Hajj information session today. Of course, the first priority is to our brothers and sisters who have registered to join this year's Hajj group with Sunshine Australia Travel. But we also announced it to our Jama'ah because this day would be open for anyone. We're discussing generally about what's involved in Hajj for anyone who might be interested to learn. So we have a few brothers and sisters in the masjid this afternoon, and inshallah we have a few people who are I was informed we're intending to be watching interstate from Darwin and Brisbane and elsewhere, so we hope that everything is working well. So for our brothers and sisters interstate, I hope you can see us well and clearly, and okay, so I'm just checking messages while we're going, so it's all live. We have some brothers and sisters on the way too, inshallah. So alhamdulillah, so today the main rundown that we'd like to discuss today is a general overview of what's involved in Hajj. I think for anyone who has been to Hajj, you might find this, maybe you already know lots of this. For anyone who has done enough reading and studying, perhaps you might know a lot of this. But for anyone who has never been before, this is my main purpose of discussing for anyone who has never been to Hajj or Umrah before. If anyone has been to Umrah, they'll have a good idea of what to expect. If any brothers or sisters have been to Umrah, then you roughly know 50% of what's involved. You'll know what to expect. But for anyone who has never been before, I remember my first time when I first went to Hajj. It was very daunting, and there were lots of different books given to me, and I found some things very confusing. I was given big, thick books about du'as to say in the first tawaf, you say this page, you say all these pages. In the second tawaf, you say all of these words of dhikr. In the third page, you say all of these words of dhikr. So when I first started to learn about Hajj, I was very confused. I come, and in case you didn't realize, I came from a non-Muslim family. So I became Muslim when I was 16 years old. And when I first started to learn about Islam and started to learn about fiqh and started to learn about Hajj, it was quite daunting to learn about all these things that were given to me. And then the more I learned, I later came to realize that in fact, there's not too much, there's very little that we need to try to say, and this is encouraged. It's not considered compulsory that we must say a lot of these things. So some of them are just recommendations. So that's what I'd like to make it easy for anyone who has never been before. If anyone is daunted or confused about what's involved in Hajj, please don't be afraid. Inshallah, as your guide, I'm your main guide for this year. So I'll do my best to try to explain things easily and clearly so that everyone can understand. Our group is a small group this year. We've had a number of groups in the past. Just a brief background. So for my dear brothers and sisters, for some who I've never met before, my name is Muhammad Ali Abullah. I'm currently one of the part-time imams here in Masjid Al-Hijrah, and for a number of years I have also been a Hajj guide with Sunshine Australia Travel. This year, inshallah, would be my 4th time as a guide and would be also my 5th Hajj, inshallah. So I performed Hajj, my own first compulsory Hajj in 2008, and from 2015 for 3 consecutive years I was a Hajj guide with Sunshine Australia Travel, with a break last year, and here we are again this year. Each year has been something unique. Many things are the same, but there's always something different every year. Among the differences is we've had different size groups in the past. We've had small groups, we've had large groups, and this year we have a fairly small group, which all have their positive aspects. The positive aspect of a smaller group is that, inshallah, we hope that everyone in our group, even everyone who are from different states in Australia, we hope that everyone in our group will get to know each other very well and will be like one big family, traveling together. And as a small group, this is one of the positive aspects that we can gain. It should be, hopefully, inshallah, much easier to manage when we are there with a smaller group, inshallah. So, firstly, I'd like to explain a little bit today about an overview of performing Hajj. A rough idea in general. I'll try not to be too long, and we'll see how time is. Depending on our time, if I can try to at least discuss briefly from beginning to end. If not, we may have to break and continue it in another meeting. Yeah. So we hope to have more than one meeting in Australia. This is our first meeting for those who have registered with this year's Hajj group. However, we do also intend to be meeting every day in our accommodation in Medina and Mecca and in Azizia and so on. So time permitting, I'll be keeping an eye on the time as we go along. Maghrib in Sydney, we need to break just before Maghrib. We have to end our session for Maghrib. So Maghrib in Sydney, Adhan is 4:54, inshallah, and it's currently 3:19 in Sydney. So we'll be ending our session today. It's not too long. There are some other Hajj groups that have a full day from morning till Maghrib, perhaps. I didn't want to it's a bit tiring to do one very long day. So I prefer to have a couple of brief meetings. It should be easier for us to organize this way. And before we do end, I would also like to discuss briefly about your Hajj inclusions, about your Hajj package with Sunshine Australia, which you have registered for. And hopefully we'll also have Ibu Desi with us, who will be able to answer any questions if anyone has any questions. Perhaps you don't, maybe you don't have any questions, but if you do, any questions about any bookings, then please direct all of your questions directly to Ibu Desi from Sunshine Australia Travel. So for now, inshallah, a rough idea of what to expect in Hajj. What's involved in Hajj? So there are many aspects about Hajj. People can study for years about Islam, of course. There's no end to learning about Islam. But just learning about Hajj itself, people can learn and study for a great deal. Now, what about someone who has never had the chance to learn or study about Hajj at all? So today I'm just beginning with a general overview without going into detail about the historical and spiritual aspects. Now, there's so much more, it's all very interesting, but my main focus right now for today is just showing some of the steps of what we are required to do. And as your Hajj guide, my main concern is to make sure that everyone understands the basics, everyone understands at least, minimum, the basics of what is involved in Hajj. Although, inshallah, we'll always be available, I will always try to be available to assist you, but in any worst case scenario, I want everyone in our group to at least understand the basics of what are involved, so that there's no need to panic. You know what comes next if we're not visible in the crowd, because there'll be lots of crowds of a few million people, inshallah. Okay, so for an overview of performing Hajj, so this is the flyer, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I'm not aware of any changes. So this, I believe, is the most up-to-date flyer, to the best of my knowledge. But again, if there's any questions about the actual package, please direct them directly to Ibu Desi. So for today, inshallah, we're all aware about the obligation of Hajj. So I don't need to spend much time on this. It's very simple. It's enough to quote this one ayah from the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And due to Allah from the people is a pilgrimage to the house, for whoever is able to find thereto a way. Now you might notice that each slide, for those who can see the slides, also has a translation in Bahasa Indonesia. Before I do continue, inshallah, with our group, English is our main language that I'll be speaking and for our group discussions and things like this. However, as usually, we have at least 50% of our groups each year are usually from Indonesian background. Just to let you know, I do speak Bahasa Indonesia. So if anyone has any questions, you may ask in Bahasa Indonesia. But when I'm explaining to a group, I explain everything in English as a group. So everyone, inshallah, can understand. We're all living in Australia. So inshallah, we all know English. But if anyone has difficulty in English and they want to ask in Bahasa Indonesia, silakan bertanya langsung dalam Bahasa Indonesia. Secara pribadi saya siap untuk menjelaskan dalam Bahasa Indonesia, insyaAllah. So we know the obligation of Hajj. The obligation of Hajj is clearly, it's an obligation. It's completely, we know it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And to quote one ayah from the Quran, it's already clear. It's a duty that we owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to perform Hajj to the house. And just to quote one hadith from the many different hadith, our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, "Ya ayyuhan nas, inna Allah qad farada alaykum al-hajj fahujju." O people, verily Allah has made Hajj obligatory upon you, so do the Hajj, perform the Hajj. So one ayah from the Quran and one Sahih hadith, this is enough. And there's many more hadith, there's many more to quote, but this is enough. We know the obligation. So we know that in order to perform Hajj, just briefly, perhaps some of us might be familiar with some of these conditions. To perform the Hajj is considered to be obligatory upon anyone who is Muslim, who has reached puberty, of sound mind, free, inshallah we're all free, able both physically and financially. So these are prerequisites in order for the obligation of Hajj. If we're not financially able, if we don't have the money to do the Hajj, if we cannot afford it yet, then it is not obligatory upon us. If we're not physically able to do it, then it is not obligatory upon us. And for women, a mahram is required. And there's also the condition that it is safe to travel, according to some scholars. So, assuming that there was no other way to travel from Australia to get to Hajj other than to get through countries that are at war with each other, then you'd say it's not safe to travel. But in this day and age, There are many different options of flight routes and different things that we can organize. So, and inshallah, to the best of our knowledge, it is currently safe for us to travel to perform Hajj, inshallah. Now, when we perform Hajj, we also need to understand that there are different types of Hajj. When I say different types of Hajj, there are 3 ways or methods of how to perform Hajj. And the 3 types or methods of performing Hajj are known as, firstly, not in any specific order, but just from any order, to say firstly, Ifrad, Tamattu' and Qiran. Now, if anyone has never heard of these names before, don't worry. It's just so that you understand at least that there are 3 ways to perform Hajj. Almost everything is identical with a few exceptions. There's a few differences between each one. So between these three types of Hajj, yeah, and these 3 happen to be called Ifrad, Tamattu' and Qiran. So what makes them different? What makes Ifrad different to the other 2 types? Ifrad is performing Hajj only without Umrah, which means the other 2 methods perform Umrah together with the Hajj. Now again, for anyone who is not familiar with these words, the terminology that I'm saying, don't worry. This is just an introduction, but throughout today's presentation, inshallah, it should become clearer. The ihram clothing cannot be removed until the Hajj is complete for anyone who is doing Ifrad. For the people doing Ifrad, they do not have to sacrifice an animal. And this method of Hajj is for those who are staying in or residing in Mecca. Yeah. And then there's Tamattu', where Umrah and Hajj are both performed but separately. So performing Umrah and then performing Hajj. Because they're doing them both separately, that means the ihram is worn for Umrah, and then ihram is finished, and then back in ihram again to do the Hajj until after the Hajj, and then taking the ihram off again. And for anyone doing this method of Hajj, it is obligatory to sacrifice an animal, what is known as a hadi or hadyu, yang sering disebutkan dalam bahasa Indonesia. And the third option is qiran. The third method is known as qiran. In qiran, everything is the same as the other 2, except that Umrah and Hajj are combined and performed together. So what's clear here is the intention that they're done together. And the ihram is worn once only from the beginning from beginning before Umrah until the very end, until after Hajj is finished. So they wear the ihram the full time. And it is also obligatory for the people doing Qiran method of Hajj to sacrifice an animal. Now when I say to sacrifice an animal, it does not mean in this day and age you do not have to go and slaughter an animal yourself, but it means that there is a cost involved and it will be done at a proper slaughterhouse. And this is something for the hadi, for the type of Hajj that you're doing, inshallah, this is included in the package, so there is no additional cost for you to do this. But this is just explaining what some of the requirements are to do this particular type of Hajj. So between these 3 types of Hajj, which type of Hajj is best? Does anyone have an idea? What's the best of these 3? Tamattu'. In my experience, it actually depends on who you ask, and you get different answers. Because from what I've read, according to Imam Malik and Imam Ash-Shafi'i, they consider Ifrad to be the best. According to Imam Ahmad, Tamattu' is the best. According to Imam Hanafi, Qiran is the best of these 3. Well, if we ask another question, which type of Hajj did the Prophet ﷺ perform? Or another question before this, does anyone know how many times did the Prophet ﷺ perform Hajj? Once. Okay. So which type of Hajj did the Prophet ﷺ perform? Qiran. But which type of Hajj did the Prophet ﷺ recommend? This hadith mentioning that if such and such had occurred, then he would have done such and such, implying that he is recommending tamattu'. So between all of these, we see among the 4 main madhabs, there's different opinion as to which of these three is the best, and between the one that the Prophet ﷺ performed himself and based on another hadith about what the Prophet ﷺ recommended to do. So basically it comes back to the point, it doesn't really matter which one of the three, because all three are Hajj. So either one of those three is valid, and basically almost everything is the same with the exception of a few things which make one version different to the other version, and everything else is the same. We all go to the Kaaba, we all go to Muzdalifah, to Arafah, to Mina, and we all do the Jamarat, we all do the same things with a few difference. The main difference comes to intention at the beginning, and also as to how long we will be in our ihram for. So inshallah we will be doing tamattu. This is the method that we intend to do, inshallah, the tamattu method, and this inshallah is easier. When I say easier, because there's not a big difference, but it means we do umrah, so we are in ihram, we do umrah, and then we're out of ihram for about a week. If we were doing one of the other methods, we'd stay in our ihram for that whole week, just waiting for Hajj to begin. And when we're in ihram, there's so many things we need to be careful of that we cannot do. We cannot use perfume, we cannot use soap that has perfume. Husband and wife are not halal when they're in ihram. There's so many things to be careful about when you're in ihram. It's like when you're fasting in Ramadan. When you're fasting, even a glass of water you cannot have. Normally it is halal, but when you're fasting it becomes haram. When you're in ihram, there are many things that are normally halal, but during the state when you're in ihram, you cannot do. So by doing tamattu', it's easier in that aspect, that we are in ihram briefly for umrah, and then we are out of ihram, we have about a week or so free, and then Hajj begins and we are in ihram again. So we are not in ihram any more than we need to be. Yeah, so this is the positive aspect about the tamattu' method. So inshallah, this is the way we intend to do our Hajj this year, inshallah. So following what I'll be explaining from now will all be related to the tamattu' method of Hajj. However, it's almost identical with the other methods anyway, with a few small exceptions, which if you had no idea what I was talking about when I mentioned those differences, throughout today's talk, inshallah, it should become clearer. So, in summary, what's involved in the tamattu' method of Hajj? 3 main steps. First is performing Umrah. Second is waiting until the Hajj days, and we wait for about a week, and then we do the Hajj. So the 3 main steps for us in tamattu'. So, first step is Umrah. Yeah. Our first step is performing Umrah. And Umrah consists of a number of steps. First, we need to make sure that we are in ihram at the miqat. And if you don't know what ihram or miqat is, don't worry, we'll get to that in a moment. Next step is tawaf and sa'i for umrah, and then we cut our hair, and that's it. We are out of ihram, and basically when we do umrah, it's all done in a day. We're in our ihram for maybe half a day, or actually more likely a full day, probably from the morning until evening, night time. In our circumstances. So if you're not familiar with what any of these things are, don't worry. Now we're going to have a look at them. So what is ihram? So I've mentioned this word ihram a few times. So ihram, and if you did a Google search, you might see pictures like this diagram that I put up on the screen here. So ihram is usually when we see people wearing a particular type of dress. When they go to perform Umrah or Hajj. Anyone who performs Umrah or Hajj has to be in the state of Ihram. But Ihram is not the clothing. To quote one definition, a definition of what Ihram means, to quote Sayyid Sabiq from Fiqh Sunnah, he states that Ihram is the intention to perform either Hajj or Umrah, or to make intention of performing both. So here he's saying that Ihram is the niyyah. In ihram is the intention. The intention to specify how you're performing your Hajj. It comes back to those 3 methods of Hajj. In some books, if you look up in some guides about how to do Hajj, they don't say it as 3 ways of doing Hajj. They call it the 3 intentions. Some books explain it as being the 3 intentions for Hajj, because that's what it comes back to. So we must make clearly before we actually get to Mecca, it must be clear, we must make our intention, which of these 3 methods of Hajj we are doing, because it means which way we are going to do it. Are we going to be in Ihram just for a moment to finish Umrah and then come out of it? Or do we intend to be in Ihram the whole time? So it comes back to, we have to make the right intention from the beginning. Yeah. And where do we make this intention? We have to make this intention and we have to be in Ihram before we get to Mecca. Before we get to Mecca, we must already be in the Ihram garments, which means we had already made the intention. So there are a number of hadith, and this is just one short hadith to quote, which mentions the places that we must make the intention at. And this is in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. Ibn Abbas narrated that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam specified for the people of Medina Dhul Hulayfa as the miqat. So for people living in Medina, there's a miqat, which is a place to make the ihram, and the name of this place is Dhul Hulayfa. It's also known as Bir Ali or Abir Ali. It's also known as this name as well. Dhul Hulayfa is mentioned in this hadith. For those coming from Ash-Sham, which is current day Syria, Palestine, Sham. For anyone coming from those regions, then their miqat is Al-Juhfa. For anyone coming from Najd, the Prophet ﷺ specified Qarn al-Manazil. And for anyone coming from Yemen, he specified Yalamlam as their miqat. These are places for the people coming from the above specified countries, as well as for anyone else who must pass through these regions to get to come to perform the Hajj or Umrah. For anyone living within those boundaries, they can assume ihram from where they set out for the journey, or even for the residents of Mecca, their miqat would be the place where they are staying in Mecca. So for anyone who is living in Mecca, so living, working, studying, if they're living, whether they're locals or not, if they've been living there from before the Hajj months, then they can just put on their ihram garment from their home. But we are traveling, obviously not from, we're not living in Mecca, so we are traveling from Australia. But in our Hajj package, we intend to go to Medina first. We intend to visit Medina first, which is not part of Hajj. Our whole stay in Medina for a few nights, inshallah, we stay in Medina for a few nights. It's not part of Hajj, but it's part of our package because it's so close. And of course, there are many virtues for us to visit the Prophet's Masjid, inshallah, Masjid Nabawi, and also the Prophet's grave. Very historical place for us. And of course, there are many virtues for us to visit Medina. So inshallah, we intend to visit Medina for a few days and then travel by bus from Medina to Mecca. So we will drive from Medina and stop off at Dhul Hulayfa, the miqat, known as Dhul Hulayfa. And there's a big masjid there. So we drive in there and there's lots of other coaches. We're in a coach, not like a bus with no aircon. Inshallah, we'll be in a coach, comfortable coach with air conditioning, inshallah. Traveling from Medina to Mecca, we stop off in Dhul Hulayfa. It might take about half an hour, or it could take an hour, it could take more. Usually the longest time is waiting for the bus sometimes. So when we leave Medina, to be practical, what I try to do is encourage our group to already be ready for your ihram when we leave our hotel in Medina. So for men to already wear the ihram garment, which we'll get to as to what is the ihram garments, when we board the bus from Medina, because it's only about half an hour or more bus ride to get to Dhul Hulayfa. So then we just get out of the bus, as long as we still have wudu. If we don't, we can go and make wudu again. There are showers there, but it's more comfortable to have the shower in the hotel. So it's enough for us just to get out of the bus. If we need to make wudu again, pray sunnah salah in the masjid, and we make our intention. And inshallah we can make our intention together to make it clear as to make sure we say the right intention. So this hadith includes us because we are traveling through one of those places. We are traveling from Medina. So that's clearly mentioned in this Sahih hadith. So that's at the miqat, the place, miqat place. So from Medina, we intend to perform Umrah. So we stop off at the miqat, Dhul Hulayfa, and we enter ihram at this miqat, making the appropriate intention. So now a little bit, how do we prepare for ihram? There are a number of things that we are encouraged to do. For example, it is recommended, not compulsory, but it is recommended, these are suggestions from different scholars, before we are in ihram, some things that we should do. Cut your fingernails and toenails. Trim them. The reason being, when you are in ihram, you cannot cut them. And there are a number of other things. Yeah, you might not understand why, but some of these things I'll mention just briefly. Shaving under the arms, shaving the private parts, trimming the moustache for brothers. For men, to apply perfume to the head and to beard, but not onto the ihram garment. And for women, not to wear perfume. So these are things that are encouraged before we are in ihram. Now you might wonder why. There are different hadith about a number of different matters. The first few, there's Sahih hadith mentioning that there are 5 things that are part of the fitrah. Among them is circumcision, shaving under the armpits, shaving the private parts, trimming the moustaches for men. So this is mentioned in Sahih hadith about doing these things, not specific for Hajj. But the point is, it's recommended by many scholars to do this before ihram, because when you're in ihram, you cannot do any of these. You cannot cut your hair, you cannot cut your trim or shave or cut your fingernails or anything like this. And it is sunnah to wear perfume. There's hadith that mentioned that Aisha radiallahu anha applied perfume on the head of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before he made the intention for ihram. So because when we're in ihram, we cannot put perfume on. But we can put perfume on before we make the intention. That's why it's encouraged. We can put, for men, we can have some perfume, but not onto the ihram garment, but onto our head or our beard or something like this. That's what's mentioned in hadith. So wearing our ihram. So firstly for men. Now the wording, so take off all fitted clothes and put on 2 sheets of cloth. What this means is, it does not mean you have to actually physically have nothing on, but it means that ultimately you have to be wearing nothing but 2 big sheets. They're like 2 big beach towels. The material is like beach towels. So inshallah, we'll try to have one meeting, a practical meeting. We're just going through some theory today. I do have a pair of ihram material with me, or not here today, but I have it available. But on another day, inshallah, we'll do a practical. But we'll also do this in Medina, and we will supply you with your ihram garment in Medina, inshallah, before the time that we need it. So when we arrive Medina, that's where we will get our ihram garments from. So for brothers, we'll be supplying you with some ihram garments, inshallah. So 2 sheets, as you can see in the diagrams. One is worn to cover the lower part of the body. Now, for any brothers from Indonesia, you might be familiar with wearing sarung. Yeah, so sarung, it's very similar to wearing sarung. So that covers the bottom part of the body, as we can see in diagram 1, 2, and 3. And then the second part, now you can also see that the person in this diagram is wearing a belt. A belt is permissible to wear to help to keep it safe so it doesn't fall off. And then there's another. So there's 2 sheets of material. The second sheet is worn to cover the top part of the body. So this, again, for men, when wearing the ihram garment, the right shoulder is uncovered when we do tawaf for umrah. So when we do our first tawaf. So any other time, we should cover. We cover both shoulders. But when we are going to do tawaf in ihram for umrah, then we uncover the right shoulder, somewhat like the diagram that we can see here. For men, we cannot wear any hats. We cannot wear any pechi like this. We cannot wear any hat. No head covering. Men cannot wear any underwear or socks. No clothing whatsoever. Not even socks, not even underwear. Nothing except for these 2 sheets of material, a bit like towels, like very large towels. We can wear shoes or sandals, but they must not cover the ankle. But again, no socks. We can use a belt or a safety pin to help keep our garments together because we don't want them falling off. We've got nothing underneath. And we can use watches, glasses, things like this, sunglasses. We can also use umbrella. So although we cannot use a hat, if we're afraid of sun protection, we can use an umbrella for men. Yeah, it's fine. So again, this is for men. So the big thing about ihram, the big difference that's different to the way we normally are is mainly for men. The big difference is for men. For women, women are free to wear whatever they please. Any clothing, as long as it is shar'i, as long as it is covering the whole body except for the face and hands. As is mentioned in hadith. Yeah? When a woman reaches puberty, her whole body should be covered. The Prophet ﷺ reportedly said this to Asma, that the whole body should be covered except for the face and the hands. So if our sisters are normally dressing like this anyway, then you just continue to do as you normally do. For us, any sisters who are not used to this, get used to it now, because when you're doing this, when you're in Hajj, when you're in Saudi Arabia, you must be dressed properly. For sisters, it does not have to be white. Yeah. Usually, most men wear white cloths. It doesn't have to be, but usually it's white. And many sisters, they want to look the same as their husbands, so they have a good photo together. It's optional. It doesn't have to be white, but if you want white, that's fine. For sisters, if you normally wear a face covering, any type of face covering, when you are in ihram, you are not permitted to wear face covering. Yeah. You cannot wear niqab or full face covering or gloves when you are in ihram. But for sisters, there is hadith that mentions about when Aisha radiallahu anha was traveling and some non-mahram men were passing by, she held her head scarf to cover her face temporarily, until they went away, and then let go and it went back. So not a permanent cover for sisters. So for sisters who don't normally wear that anyway, if you need wudu, if you could please walk around. There's sisters in there. To pray? So for any sisters who don't normally wear niqab, again, you've got nothing to worry about, just regular head covering. But if you do normally wear some type of face covering, then it's not permitted when you are in ihram. Now, for brothers, how to wear the ihram garment, inshallah, we will have practice. But if you want to, if you're concerned and you want to have an idea of how to wear this, there are many tutorials on YouTube. Yeah. We will have our own practice as well, inshallah. We try to have a practical before we leave Australia, but because many members of our group are in different cities, in Brisbane and Darwin, for example, we might not be able to meet with everyone physically before we meet up. So inshallah, when we are all together, we can have our practical meetings and discussions in Medina. But in the meantime, please also search on YouTube. There are a couple of links here as well, just as examples. But if you just do a search for YouTube on how to wear ihram or something like this, I'm sure you'll come up with hundreds of tutorials to make it to give you a good idea of how to wear the ihram garment for men. So when we are in ihram, so when I say in ihram, so when we need, before we make the intention, we need to make sure we are dressed properly. Because we understand already, for men, we cannot wear any clothing, not even socks or underwear. So when we make the intention, we must already be dressed properly. So we need to make sure. Sometimes we have members of our group, we leave our hotel in Medina already wearing our ihram garments. and we get on the bus. But sometimes some brothers, they're still wearing some shorts or pants or underwear because they're still a bit scared. So when they leave the hotel and get on the bus, they might still be wearing something underneath. So when we get to the miqat, I'll try to remind you, but don't rely on me to remind you. When we get to the miqat, just double check, make sure you're not wearing anything underneath that you should not be wearing, because we must be in our ihram properly before we make the intention. If we make the intention and there's something wrong, then we've got a problem. And we don't want to have this problem. We don't want you to have any costs. There are ways to make up for some, you could say, mistakes that are done during Hajj, as long as they are not the pillars of Hajj, as long as they are not the rukun or arkan of Hajj. But there are some other matters which, if a mistake is done, you can make up for it by sacrificing an animal, such as a sheep, a goat. And that might cost a bit more than $100 in Australian dollars. So try not to, for your own sake, try not to make mistakes. And that's one example. Yeah, so we need to make sure we make the intention for ihram at the right place, dressed properly, before we say the intention. Now, what is the intention? Depending on what type of Hajj we are doing, the intention would vary. There are some who make intention for Hajj, they make intention for Hajj only, because they don't do Umrah. There are others who make intention for Umrah and Hajj. We are doing Umrah and Hajj, but we're doing them separately. So for the pilgrims doing tamattu', this intention on the screen here is only for pilgrims doing tamattu'. So our intention that we say inshallah is only for Umrah. We make intention for Umrah only. An example of what to say, and there's some other versions, but the meaning is almost the same, is to say something like labbaik Allahumma Umrah. This is an example of what to say, which means I'm here to answer your call, O Allah, to perform Umrah. Now it's very short, very simple, but this is what will determine if we're doing our Hajj properly or not. This is the moment that we make our intention, and inshallah we can say this together. Yeah. We make the intention together inshallah, but make sure we are dressed properly first at the right place. So everyone has to make this intention. Now it's also mentioned in the hadith that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that even a woman in a state of confinement after childbirth and one in her menstruation period must take a complete bath, ghusl, declare her ihram, and perform everything involved in Hajj and Umrah except for tawaf around the Kaaba, which she can perform after she is in a pure state again. So even if a sister is not praying at that moment that we stop off at the miqat, she still must make the intention at that place. So before we leave our hotel in Medina, everyone in our group should have done those recommendations. Have a full ghusl, a full body wash, like we would on Eid, like we're encouraged to do on Jum'ah, and inshallah we do every day anyway, to have a full wash, ghusl, and still make the intention at the miqat, yeah, even for sisters, even if they are not praying at that stage. So after the intention is made at the miqat, we are encouraged to recite talbiyah. So after we make the intention, then we are encouraged to recite talbiyah. You might be wondering, what is talbiyah? Talbiyah are words like words of dhikr that we recite over and over again. We can say it individually, we can say it as a group. Inshallah, usually we say them together as groups, and people say this as often as possible. And we are encouraged to say this as often as possible until we're about to begin tawaf. So from the time of being at the miqat, we make the intention for ihram, and then we say talbiyah until we are about to commence tawaf. So we enter Masjid Haram and we're about to start counting our tawaf. So talbiyah, what is talbiyah? Talbiyah, this is what we are encouraged to recite over and over again. We say, لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. We say this over and over again. لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. So I said in the beginning that there's not really all that much that we need to try to learn to memorize before we go to perform Hajj. Which, one of the first books that I received was very thick, full of all these du'as. You must learn all of these things before you go to Hajj. It was very daunting. There's not much that we are encouraged to do that's based on the Sunnah. Many are recommendations from scholars. It's good, it's fine to say these recommendations if we know how to say them. But honestly, I'm sure you will probably see people doing tawaf with books in their hand. They're reading books when they're walking around the Kaaba. We don't have to read all of these books when going around the Kaaba. If we know that what's based on the Sunnah and it's enough to say some of the very short words of dhikr and dua, then we can enjoy and look at the Kaaba and look at what's going on around us while we say these words of dhikr. We do not have to have books in our hand when we are walking around the Kaaba. But you will see people with books on strings around their necks because they can't memorize all the du'as that some books tell them to say. But if we are able to try to get used to memorizing some of the things that we should say during Hajj, this is one of them. Not compulsory, but highly recommended. Everyone performing Hajj and Umrah should be saying Talbiyah from the time of being in Ihram. So very short to say, and inshallah, I'll be informing for those who have registered with us. I will be giving you links with the text and booklets. Now, some of you might have seen, I've prepared some booklets, which is a summary of today's talk and talks from previous years. It's a very simple guide in English and also in Bahasa Indonesia of how to perform Hajj, basically what we're talking about today, and I've made some copies here already. Everyone in our group, inshallah, even if you're interstate, you will receive one of these. This will be among the things that we will give to you. So everyone who registered with us will get one of these. Anyone who's here today, you can get one. We have some over here. Also for sisters, inshallah, somewhere near the TV screen that you should be able to see. There's on a table. There's booklets, some in English and some in Bahasa Indonesia. Feel free to take them. And that has basically most of the things that we're talking about today. So we are encouraged to recite the tawaf until we reach the black stone, Hajar Aswad, and start our tawaf. So we're still discussing our ihram. So what are some of the conditions with ihram? So when a person is wearing the ihram garment and they've said the intention, labbaik Allahumma umratan, for the pilgrims doing tamattu. Yeah, we're doing tamattu, so we make intention for umrah. Then we are considered to be a muhrim. A muhrim is someone in the state of ihram. Now usually in Bahasa Indonesia, the word muhrim is used incorrectly. Quite often in Indonesia, many people think muhrim is something else. They think muhrim is mahram. So a male relative for a female is a mahram. But in Indonesia, most people say muhrim. Muhrim is someone in the state of ihram. And mahram is the male relative of a woman. So mahram, muhrim. So muhrim is someone in the state of ihram. So when you are wearing the right clothing, you've made the intention at the right place, then you are a muhrim. And there are certain things which you cannot do. Just like when you're fasting, water is halal to drink, but not when you're fasting. It becomes haram. There are certain things that are prohibited for you to do as a muhrim. And if you break any of these prohibitions, any of these violations, then you must pay an expiation, a fidyah, if you break any of them. Some examples. Some things that you are not allowed to do when you are in the state of ihram. So I've mentioned some of these already. For men, we must not wear any fitted clothing. We wear no clothing except for those two garments. Shoes, sandals, belts are okay, but not clothing. We cannot cover the head with a hat or material on top of our head. We cannot wear underwear or socks. Shoes or sandals must not cover the ankles for men. For women, you must not wear niqab or gloves when you are in ihram. Men and women must not wear perfume clothes, or use anything that has perfume. This is where it gets tricky. Okay? You might think, okay, I'm not wearing perfume, but you go to a public bathroom, you want to wash your hands, you cannot use the soap because that is perfumed soap. It has a fragrance. You can use soap, you can have showers, you can use shampoo when you're in ihram, as long as it has no scent, there's no fragrance. Now, there are some shops here in Australia that you can buy soap, pure soap, no fragrance. But most soaps have perfume in it. They have a fragrance in it. If you cannot find it here, don't worry. Inshallah, we can buy it in Medina before we are in ihram. But if you can find some soap, you don't need too many things, but the main thing is soap. I'll explain later about some things that you might want to buy before you leave. But for now, just as a rough idea, you can wash yourself, you can have a shower, you can use shampoo when you are in ihram, as long as it is not perfumed. Most soaps and shampoos, usually they are perfumed. So that's what we need to be very careful of. Even tissues. Personally, you can buy the small packs of traveling tissues, the pocket ones. You can find some that say no fragrance or fragrance free. That will be a good suggestion if you think you might need tissues. Otherwise, if you're in the state of ihram and you get a tissue and it has a fragrance, it's the same as rubbing. It's like holding a bottle of perfume and holding it at your nose. You're playing with something that's not permitted. It's like if you're fasting and you order a cup of coffee from the coffee shop and you just hold it there to smell. Yeah, you wouldn't do that when you're fasting Ramadan. So these are some of the things we need to be careful of when we're in ihram. So no perfume, but it also means anything else that has perfume. Now, when we are in ihram, in the bus journey to get to Mecca from Medina, usually we get given boxes of gift food, snacks, from the Saudi government, or sometimes from rich sheikhs. They're donating for the pilgrims, and we get at each checkpoint we go to, they check our passports and things like this, and then there's people giving us donations. They give us boxes of water and snacks, food. Now, in the old days, sometimes they would have a wet tissue, like KFC sometimes give you the wet tissue. Again, that has fragrance. But inshallah, I think they realize that they cannot give that to pilgrims in ihram. So I think they realize now. But just in case, if you find a wet tissue given to you, just remember, it might have fragrance. So you do not use it, because it's just like you're wiping perfume on yourself. Yeah. So that's a few things to be careful of. Also, we cannot trim our nails, our fingernails, our toenails. We cannot cut our hair. We cannot marry or propose to marry, although you might not be intending right now, but if you're not married yet, and then if a brother is on the bus and sees someone he is attracted to, and then wants to propose to someone on the bus or wherever he is, maybe doing tawaf, it's not the right place anyway, but if just in case you think of that, when you're in ihram, you cannot propose for marriage either. Husband and wife are not halal. You can of course walk together, you can sit together, but you cannot do intimate relations together, when you're in ihram. Very important. No one is allowed to go hunting. Now you might think, why mention this? It is mentioned in hadith. In this day and age, we don't need to go hunting, but just in case you were thinking of it, you can't go hunting. Men and women must not get involved in disputes. So none of us should get into disputes or arguments or fighting, especially when we are in ihram. Especially when we are in ihram. And I guarantee you will probably see people losing their temper when they're in ihram. Just walk away. Don't get involved, because it might affect your Hajj. So just remember what you are doing there. Hajj is full of tests. Yes, we stay in 4 or 5-star hotels in Medina, in Mecca, but you cannot expect it to be the same as if you're staying in a 5-star hotel in Sydney or London or Paris. It's still a 5-star hotel, it's still the same big brands, whatever the big brand is that we're staying in, but there's bound to be some form of tests. We will surely be tested, and Hajj is full of unique tests, and every individual is tested in different ways. So you see people, sometimes they get angry when they normally wouldn't be angry. So try to be careful about this. Try not to get angry. If you see people arguing or fighting, just don't get involved. It's not permitted. During Hajj, it's mentioned in the Quran. وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. There's no arguing, there's no quarreling during Hajj. There is to be no. It's commanded in the Quran. So do not do any quarreling, arguing, disputing, debating when you're in Hajj. So especially when you're in Ihram. But when you are in Ihram, things that you are permitted to do, as I mentioned before, you can wear watches and glasses, sunglasses. You can wash yourself with unscented soap. You can change your Ihram garment. So brothers, you can change your garment if it gets dirty. You can put on a new one. It does not invalidate your Ihram in any way. We can use an umbrella to cover our head as long as it's not sitting on our head. And you will see people selling umbrella hats. Umbrellas that stick on your head. You will see this. That would classify as a hat, a permanent. So we cannot wear a hat. We cannot wear a head covering. You will see small umbrellas with a head thing to it sticks on your head. Just to make things confusing for you. And everything's made in China, of course. So a standard umbrella, you're holding it. It's not a head covering. So yes, you can use that. But don't get mixed up when you see people selling umbrella hats. Yeah. If we're lying down, we're sleeping when we're in a state of Ihram, it's considered permissible for us to cover, because we cannot wear shoes or sandals that cover our ankles. But if it's cold, we can cover our feet with our Ihram garment. It's considered okay, because it's only a temporary cover. However, there are some recommendations for men. Some recommendations: avoid walking around with only the bottom part of your Ihram. Maybe not so when we're about to do Umrah, but during the Hajj days when we're staying in tents in Mina, some people start to get a bit lazy and they just walk around, they walk out of the tent. So you might see men walking out of the men's tents to the to the toilet block or something. And then some people might only be wearing the bottom part of the Ihram. It's not very good. Now, some brothers might have a better looking, they might have a 6-pack. I've only got a 1-pack, and you don't want to see my 1-pack. Yeah, so it's not a very good look. So don't try not to walk out of your tent with only the bottom part. Try to dress properly, because you'll know that outside of your tent, not only brothers but sisters will also see you. Yeah, so try to be dressed properly. Yeah, even though we only have two garments, try to wear both of them whenever you're in a public place. Be careful how you sit. Just a reminder for brothers, there's nothing on underneath, so be careful how you sit. So when wearing Ihram, if we're not used to wearing sarung, then it's something that we might not think about, especially if you're going to sit down on steps. Don't sit down on steps and put your leg out, because you don't know what's showing. Yeah, so be very careful. Yeah, for sisters, they're used to wearing dresses. They know how to walk, they know how to sit. But for men, just remember, it's like wearing a dress. Yeah, so it's just something that needs to be reminded. Yeah. Okay, so Umrah. The 3 main steps of Umrah. First is Ihram at the Miqat, which we have already just discussed. And then there's Tawaf and Sa'i for Umrah. And then we cut our hair and Umrah is finished. So we've discussed the Ihram at the Miqat and what's involved with Ihram. So when we arrive Mecca, so as our group, we travel together as a group from Medina in a bus or coach. And inshallah, the first thing we will do is try to check into our hotel in Mecca, make sure that we all have our room keys before we go and perform tawaf. Yeah. So please don't get off the bus and just think, oh, I'm going to go straight to the masjid. It's just across the road. I'm going to go straight to Masjid Haram. Try to wait until we have checked in. We go through the process, make sure everyone has their luggage and your room key, because otherwise, if you later find out a few hours later that your luggage is not in your room, it might be impossible to follow up and try to find where your luggage is. So make sure we get off the bus, all the luggage comes off the bus. There's about 40-something people, maybe 43 people or so on each bus. And that's not all of our group. We have a smaller group, less than that. So we'll be with at least one other group or maybe a few other smaller groups. So all the luggage would have to come off the bus. We need to make sure that everyone has their room key, make sure that everyone has the proper room and their luggage. Inshallah, before we go to perform tawaf, if anyone has already performed Umrah before, they would know what to do. But for anyone who has not been before, then at least this first tawaf, I suggest that we try to do together as a group. But it's optional. But I do recommend, if you have never done Umrah or Hajj before, then at least this first tawaf, the very first time, is one that we should try to do together. But after this one, you should know, everyone should be confident after this first tawaf, and then you can do tawaf every day by yourself, inshallah. But for the first tawaf, with the exception, if anyone already knows what to do, of course they don't need to join the group. But I will announce, depending on what time we arrive, and we issue the room key to everybody, and then we usually announce a time that, okay, say half an hour from now, let's meet in the lobby area of the hotel. We meet as a group and we walk to Masjid Haram to perform tawaf together and complete and then sa'i and cut our hair. We complete our umrah together and then we relax in Mecca. Okay, so tawaf and sa'i. When we're ready to perform tawaf, after we've checked into our hotel, and we go to perform tawaf. So what is tawaf? Some people might be wondering, what is tawaf? The literal meaning of the word tawaf means to circle or to go around. In Islamic terminology, it means to go around, to walk around, to circumambulate the Kaaba 7 times with the Kaaba on your left, meaning in an anti-clockwise direction. So this is what it means. So it means we need to do 7 laps around the Kaaba. Before we commence tawaf, we need to make sure that we have wudu. So if there's any sisters who are not praying, then you cannot perform this tawaf yet. If you cannot perform this tawaf and sa'i, that means you are still in ihram. So just a reminder, husband and wife, you can still be sharing the same room together. You can still be literally sleeping next to each other, but you're not halal for intimate relations yet. Yeah? For any sisters who are not in the state of praying. Because we must have wudu to perform tawaf. Intention, it's enough to say in the heart. And for men, this is when it is sunnah for us to uncover the right shoulder. Every other time we can cover both of our shoulders with the ihram garment, but it is sunnah for us to uncover the right shoulder, called ittiba', when we perform this tawaf. And for us doing the tamattu' method of Hajj, we are doing the Umrah separately. This should be this may be the only time. It may be the first of 2, or it might be the only time that we need to do tawaf in the state of ihram. Because any other tawaf that we do after this will most likely be not in ihram, but wearing normal clothing. So when we enter Masjid Haram, the best thing for us is to start tawaf. Normally when we enter a masjid, the sunnah is whenever we enter any masjid, the first thing to do is Tahiyatul Masjid, 2 rak'ah sunnah. That's the sunnah whenever entering a masjid. But when entering Masjid Haram, this is unique, and tawaf is unique only for Masjid Haram. So tawaf is the best form of ibadah that we can do in Masjid Haram other than fard or wajib salah. Yeah. So tawaf is the best form of ibadah that we can do. So it's best that the first thing we do is tawaf as soon as we go inside, with the exception if we know that it's almost time for Isha, it's maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes until the adhan for Isha, maybe in that case, then maybe we might just want to find a spot to get ready. So we might go and then we can do Tahiyatul Masjid, wait for the adhan, sunnah, get ready for the fardu salah, and after the salah, and then we might want to do our tawaf. That will make sense. But most likely we will do our tawaf in the evening after Isha. So in that case, as soon as we enter Masjid Haram, we go and do tawaf straight away as the first act of ibadah that we do. The starting point is Hajar al-Aswad. Yeah. So Hajar Aswad or Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone, which is located in one of the corners of the Kaaba, and perhaps many of us might have seen pictures of this or photos of this. This is the starting and end point. So this is the start and finish line for the laps, the circuits, the circumambulation of tawaf that we'll be doing. Now, just remember, there are a few million people coming to perform Hajj. So there will be probably tens of thousands of people at least trying to perform tawaf at the same time that we are trying to do tawaf. So it will be very crowded. It is very likely that it might be too difficult for us to do the tawaf on the ground floor next to the Kaaba. That's why there are different levels. So even if we are on a different level and it's hard for us to see, how do we know the starting point? Then usually there are signs like this one, tawaf starts. But don't be surprised if you see misspelling. I've seen the tawaf strat, the same sign but the A and R the wrong way around. I've seen tawaf strat. You see lots of English spelling mistakes in all signs in the masjid and around. So tawaf start, it might say tawaf strat, but it means start, of course. There might be green lights or there might be a green line. Either way, they try to make it clear what is the starting line, which is the start and ending line for each tawaf. The point is, we start and end at Hajar al-Aswad. So if we are able to do the tawaf on the ground floor next to the Kaaba, then the best thing for us to do, it is sunnah for us to try to kiss the black stone, to kiss Hajar al-Aswad, like we see in this picture here. If it's not possible to kiss Hajar al-Aswad, then we are encouraged to at least try to touch it with our right hand, and we can kiss our right hand. If we're further away, and most likely, like tens of thousands of other people, will be further away on whatever level, ground floor, basement, or any of the other levels, to do the tawaf, then we just make a gesture. When we're crossing the line, when we cross the line, maybe it's a green line or there's green lights on our left and right side, when we pass Hajar Aswad, we can just raise our hand and we say, Bismillahi Wallahu Akbar. Now some people still kiss their hand, some people say you shouldn't kiss your hand unless you're actually touching it. The point is, we raise our hand and we face the Hajar Aswad, Bismillahi Wallahu Akbar. For the first time at least we say the Bismillah. For every other lap that we do, it's enough just to say Allah Akbar. But you'll hear people saying Bismillah in everyone. So Bismillahi Wallahu Akbar as we pass Hajar Aswad. Now it's very likely that you will not be able to kiss Hajar Aswad. Now kissing Hajar Aswad, it's reported that Umar radiallahu anhu, he came and he said when he went to kiss Hajar Aswad, he said that I know you are nothing more than just a stone. You are just a stone, just a rock. You are just a stone. And you cannot bring any benefit or anything negative. You cannot bring any madarat or any manfa'ah. If I had not seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kiss you, then I would not kiss you. This is what Umar radiallahu anhu is reported to have said. So we understand it is sunnah because that's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. But if it's difficult, There's no problem. Just leave it. We don't have to. We don't have to kiss Hajar Aswad. You will see people pushing and shoving and maybe getting into fights trying to kiss Hajar Aswad. This is going against everything that we're going to do. We're going to do ibadah. We're going to seek Allah's pleasure. How can we seek Allah's pleasure if we do something haram for something that's not even wajib? Something that's only a recommendation if possible. So it's a sunnah recommended if possible. And for some people, Allah makes it possible, makes it easy for some people. But for many people, it's very difficult. So just it might be better just to avoid it. Yeah. Especially doing the first tawaf. Just try to focus on doing tawaf, finish our umrah, and then we have almost a week before we perform Hajj, lots of spare time, and you can go in your own time, and maybe one day you'll be able to kiss a Hajar Aswad. Now, I want you to have a look at these two pictures, in particular the bottom picture. So from everything we've discussed so far, we've discussed that when we are in the state of ihram, we need to wear the two garments, nothing else. What's wrong with this picture? Yes. So, in actual fact, this is now when we do tawaf, you'll see people doing tawaf in normal clothing because they're not in ihram. And every day after we have finished umrah, we are out of ihram. So yes, we can wear normal clothing. This picture, we can tell that this is not actually Masjid Haram. This is a Manasik training facility practicing for Hajj before they leave to do the Hajj. So it looks like it's in Indonesia or Malaysia. We can tell by the hats they're wearing. So they're just doing a practice of wearing ihram. But I just wanted to bring this up just to test, to see if we're paying attention so far. If we've been paying attention, that yes, when we're in ihram, we cannot wear hats, and there's lots of people wearing hats, and there's people wearing trousers underneath the ihram. So these are some of the things that, inshallah, there was a quiz, and inshallah we all pass this quiz if we could identify the many things that are wrong with this picture. Okay, so we commence our tawaf with the Kaaba on our left doing anti-clockwise. So that's the only way that we can do our tawaf. If we enter the masjid and the Hajar Aswad is on the other side of the Kaaba, no problem. We get in there and we start walking, but we're not counting yet. We cannot start counting until we pass the Hajar Aswad starting and finishing line. Now for brothers, we are encouraged to walk briskly in the first 3 laps or circuits of the tawaf, yeah. And then walk normally in the remaining 4. So we walk briskly. It's almost like a power walk. It's not a jog, but not jogging, but it's walking, but a little bit like a power walk, what some people do in exercise. So just a little bit more. So the point is, we're making it look that we're strong and healthy. That's why we uncover our right arm to show our muscles and show that we are in good health. We do the walk for the first 3 laps or circuits of tawaf. So when we go around the Kaaba, so there's a diagram on the bottom, so we can see the Hajar Aswad, and there's a green line on this diagram. So anywhere along there, once we cross that line, we start walking around. So obviously, the closer we are to the Kaaba, the shorter the distance we will do. But because of the crowds, you'll be walking very slowly. The people further away from the Kaaba, they'll be walking more quickly, but a longer distance. So it depends. If you like being in crowds and it gets very sweaty, a lot of people, they do tawaf, they come out, they're wet from other people's sweat. I'm sorry to say. It might sound disgusting, and it's men and women mixed. Men and women are mixed. So it's not comfortable in the big crowds to do the tawaf close to Kaaba usually, when it's crowded. Because you come out, you finish, wet. Your clothing is wet from other people's sweat, men and women. It's It's an uncomfortable situation if you're close to the Kaaba. So the distance is shorter, but walking very slow. It's so squashy. You're squashed in like this. You're getting pushed and shoved. It's very crowded. If you're a bit further away, you can walk more comfortably without touching other people, but it's a longer distance. But because you can walk faster, maybe you finish the same time as the people next to Kaaba, because they're so slow, because it's so crowded. So there's positive and negatives from any location. So we can see that there's an area known as Hijr Ismail, also known as Hatim. It's like a half circle fence. It's like a wall, it's a fence. And in the top picture you can see the photo of what it looks like from that angle, and in the bottom diagram from the other way. So does anyone know what this is? It's called Hijr Ismail. Does anyone know what this is? It's part of the Kaaba, the original foundation. From the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when the Kaaba was being rebuilt, and when the Meccan chiefs were about to get into war and argue about who should put the Hajar Aswad back into its place when they were rebuilding, they were renovating the Kaaba, they did not have enough funds to rebuild it to its original foundation. So from the original foundation, from when it was built from the time of Nabi Ibrahim and Nabi Ismail alayhim as-salam, it was up to that area known as Hatim or Hijr. But during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when the Meccans, they were still not Muslim at the time, they were rebuilding the Kaaba after a flood. They were replacing everything. They did not have the funds to rebuild it all the way back up to there. So that is still considered to be within the Kaaba. That's the original foundation. So when we do tawaf, we need to make sure that we go around it. Sometimes there's a gate and there's security there. Sometimes you can go inside, you can pray in there. It is permissible, you can do salah inside that Hatim or Hijr area. You can do salah in there, but not tawaf. No shortcut. So you must go around that when we do a tawaf. So when we walk around, so we begin from Hajar Aswad and we walk around past the Hijr Hatim area, and we get to the third corner, the third last, known as Rukun Yamani, which means the Yamani corner, because that's the corner facing Yemen. So when we get to that corner, if possible, because it's mentioned in hadith that the Prophet ﷺ touched it. Yeah. So if it is possible, if we are next to Kaaba and doing tawaf, we can touch it with our right hand and say takbir, Allahu Akbar. But if we cannot touch it, and most likely we will not be able to touch it, then you do not say, you don't have to raise your hand or anything like this. Just keep walking until we get back to the start line again. We must cross that line again, and then we count one. We just finish one. We cannot do finish Rukun Yamani and then walk sideways to walk out of the masjid without crossing that line. We must cross the line of passing Hajar Aswad. So start and finish by passing Hajar Aswad, then we have counted one. We just finished one. Be careful the way we count. It's very easy. A lot of people, they think, oh, they get lost. They've been walking for 20 minutes. Oh, I forgot. How many have we done now? So it's very important how we count. So we start, we cross it first. So we're beginning one, until we cross it the second time, we finish one. So we need to be careful how we count. So when we do this tawaf, once we've reached Hajar Aswad, so the second time, that means we've finished one circuit. And again, if possible, kiss Hajar Aswad, or if not, touch it with our right hand and kiss our right hand, or from a distance, just say Allahu Akbar and continue to do the rest of the tawaf 7 times. So that means we pass Hajar Aswad 8 times to have finished 7 laps. 8 times to pass the Hajar Aswad would be 7 laps, 7 finished. Because the first time we pass it, it's beginning. Yeah, it's only just beginning. So what do we say when doing tawaf? Now I mentioned before that sometimes there are many books and they say to say 1, 2 or 3 different pages of different du'as. First tawaf say this, second tawaf say this. If you know what you're saying, you understand it, and it's good meaning, and you want to say it, go ahead. But from my own experience, there's no need to overburden yourself with something that's not based on the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reportedly say, and what do the scholars say? The scholars say that we may say any dua during tawaf. Any dua. It is better to say what the Prophet ﷺ said or taught during tawaf rather than reciting Quran. But reciting Quran is better than making dua with what the Prophet did not say or do. So the point is, we can say any dua or dhikr or recite Quran when we do tawaf. Any dua, dhikr, reciting ayat from Quran. You will see some people walking with mushaf, they're reading Quran. They're reciting Quran. If you've memorized some of the Quran, you can do your muraja'ah, you can do your revising whatever of Quran you've memorized when you're doing tawaf. You can make your dua, Ya Allah, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana. You can make whatever dua you've memorized. But it's, of course, the best thing is we follow the example of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as much as possible. So there are numerous hadith. There is one hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu who narrates that he heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, whoever does tawaf of the house 7 times without saying anything except for Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, then 10 of his mistakes are forgiven. He is granted 10 rewards and he is elevated 10 degrees. MashaAllah. Very simple, very common words of dhikr which most Muslims around the world are familiar with, inshaAllah. Inshallah, we are all familiar with Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Most Muslims, inshallah, are familiar with these words of dhikr. And this is one hadith that says it's enough to say this when doing tawaf. Subhanallah. There is another hadith, a stronger hadith, that mentions when between Rukun Yamani, the Yamani corner, and Hajar Aswad, so that's the last face of the Kaaba, from the 3rd corner coming back to Hajar Aswad corner, that short distance. There is a hadith that says that the Prophet ﷺ said to say, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. And this is another dua which most Muslims around the world are familiar with. We are usually familiar with this. This dua is mentioned in numerous hadith. It is also mentioned in the Quran. So this, is, of course, is a very good dua to say. And this hadith mentions that the Prophet encouraged to say this at that particular time. So as a minimum, it's enough that we can do from Hajar Aswad all the way to Rukun Yamani. Just keep saying over and over again, Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And then when we reach Rukun Yamani, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar, a few times until we reach Hajar Aswad. Simple. We don't need to have books tied around our necks and reading the books and bumping into people and then forgetting how many tawaf have I done so far. So if we just focus on these are just the short, simple examples. But as I mentioned, what numerous scholars have said, we can say any dua, we can say words of dhikr, we can recite Quran, but these are some examples of the shortest and simplest things for us to say, inshaAllah. So other matters regarding tawaf. Tawaf is the best form of ibadah to perform in Masjid Haram other than fard or wajib salah. When it is time for fard salah, if the adhan is called, or especially if the iqamah is called, we must stop. No one should be doing tawaf when the iqamah has been called. If the adhan has been called, maybe we've got a few minutes, but we can already stop and find a place to pray. Especially as tawaf is done men and women together. So if you know it's about time for iqamah, then we should try to stop and get in a good position that we know, okay, women and men should not be praying next to each other. So we find without a barrier. So we look for how is a place that we're not going to get lost. So there's time, a few moments before the iqamah to get ready for salah. So that after the salah, we can continue our tawaf again. So what happens if you break your tawaf? If it's time for salah, you stop your tawaf. Remember where you are. If you lose wudu, if you pass wind or something like this happens, you lose your wudu. You need to go to the bathroom, make wudu again. Then you start back from where you broke your wudu, or you start back from where you stopped your tawaf, and you can continue again. Some scholars differ. Some scholars say, no, you shouldn't do that. You need to start from the beginning again. But then what if someone constantly keeps losing their wudu? They'll never do finish tawaf for the rest of their life. So many scholars say it's okay to continue your tawaf from where you left. So you've done 1.5 up to Rukun Yamani, and then you have to go to the bathroom. Okay, when you come back, you make wudu, you come back again. You can't start continuing your counting until you get back to the same spot you were, and continue counting again from Rukun Yamani, and then when you get to Hajar Aswad, it's 2. Yeah. Tawaf, yes, we are encouraged to make dua and dhikr or recite Quran, but we are allowed to talk. We are permitted to talk in tawaf. There is a hadith that says that the Prophet ﷺ said that tawaf is like salah, except that you may talk in tawaf. So yes, we are allowed to talk in tawaf, but of course we should be careful what we talk about. We are in the Masjid Haram, tawaf is ibadah, the best form of ibadah other than fardu salah. So try not to speak about anything that is not good. فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Don't talk about, oh, look at this person in front of us, oh, they're so messy, oh, it's so smelly, or don't speak like this. Speak about other people. Yeah, we need to ask something like, oh, how many tawaf have we done? Is that 3 or 4? Oh, it's 3. We can confirm this. It's a need. It's important, we can ask. So try not to be busy with unnecessary talk. Therefore, try to focus on dhikr and dua or Quran. Okay, so there are different types of tawaf, but our main focus is discussing about performing tawaf for umrah, because we want to complete our umrah. Once we have finished all 7 laps, once we finish 7 circuits around the Kaaba, the Prophet ﷺ reportedly went to Maqam Ibrahim. Now, Maqam Ibrahim, this is a golden cage you'll see in front of the Kaaba or close to the Kaaba. Now, this is not the golden cage itself. The cage is there covering the Maqam Ibrahim. The Maqam Ibrahim is a stone. It is a stone in which Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam reportedly stood on when building the Kaaba. And his footprint is still there. But because some people would go to that stone and almost be, wallahu alam, as if they were almost worshipping that stone, it's being covered for protection by a golden cage, so that people stop focusing too much on that stone. It is mentioned in the Quran. And when the Prophet ﷺ finished his 7 tawaf, it's not far from Hajar Aswad. It's very close. So when you finish at Hajar Aswad, the Prophet went behind the Maqam Ibrahim and he prayed 2 rak'ah. 2 rak'ah salah. So when the Prophet ﷺ passed Hajar Aswad, he went to the Maqam Ibrahim and he quoted this ayah from the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واتخذوا من مقام إبراهيم مصلى, and take, O believers, from the standing place of Abraham a place of prayer. And that's what we do in Umrah whenever we finish doing our 7 laps of tawaf. So in the diagram you can see it's not far after passing the line of Hajar Aswad. It's a little bit further from there. It is a few meters away from the Kaaba. Now you might be thinking, how did Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam stand on Maqam Ibrahim, on the stone? Because they didn't have ladders back then, so that was how he stood to put up the blocks for the wall of the Kaaba. How could he stand a few meters away from the Kaaba to put that on? You might be wondering this. Does anyone know why? Does anyone know about this story? Maqam Ibrahim during the life of the Prophet ﷺ was next to the Kaaba. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu as Khalifa. I believe it was Umar radiallahu anhu, but let me confirm that. Among one of the 4 righteous caliphs after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, they decided to move the Maqam Ibrahim a few meters back. Why? Because everyone who was coming to perform tawaf, they came, and after they finished tawaf, they went to do their salah, and because the number of Muslims was growing and growing and growing, there was a big problem. It was causing traffic congestion. People were doing tawaf, stepping on people doing salah. There was no room, there was nowhere for people who are still doing tawaf. They're still doing 2, 3, 4, and someone who's done 7. So they're doing their sunnah salah, and other people are still doing their tawaf, and they're stepping on the people who are doing the salah. So they decided to move it back to allow enough room for people to do tawaf in front of Maqam Ibrahim, because the sunnah is to pray behind Maqam Ibrahim. But if it is difficult, if it's too crowded, or for whatever other reason, if it is too difficult to pray behind Maqam Ibrahim, it is permissible to do this sunnah salah anywhere within the Masjid Haram. But ideally, we try to do it somewhere behind Maqam Ibrahim if possible. It is sunnah to do it short, simple, just 2 quick, short, brief raka'ah, 2 raka'ah. In the first raka'ah after Al-Fatiha, to recite Surah Al-Kafirun, and in the second raka'ah to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. Very short, simple, not too long, because it's high congestion. It's very big, very busy area. The Prophet ﷺ, when he completed the 2 raka'ah, in Sahih Hadith it says that the Prophet went back to kiss Hajar Aswad again. But for most of us this will not be possible. Therefore, we do not need to go. It's not something we have to focus on going back to kiss Hajar Aswad. So the point is, after we complete our 7 units, our 7 laps around the Kaaba, we do 2 raka'ah salah behind Maqam Ibrahim if possible. Drink Zamzam water before going to Sa'i. Yeah, we go to perform Sa'i. It's most likely not possible to go and kiss Hajar Aswad before Sa'i. So after drinking Zamzam water, we just go straight to the Sa'i area. Now Sa'i area is very close to the Kaaba. And these days you probably won't realize it's as if it's like in one big part of a building, because it's all undercover and air conditioned. So you walk, it's all tiled, so you're walking from one part of the masjid to the other. But back in the old days, Sa'i was walking away from the Kaaba. We're still walking away from the Kaaba, the same distance, but it's all big, it's all tiled off, and it's all air conditioned and everything now. So it's like one big building. So we walk to the Sa'i area, and the Sa'i area is between 2 hills, Safa and Marwa. Safa and Marwa. So here we can see in this, here's a diagram, it makes it a bit clearer. So between Safa and Marwa. So from the Kaaba, we walk to commence Sa'i. So Sa'i, the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have recited when he approached Safa hill. So we must start from Safa, the 2 hills. The Prophet ﷺ reportedly quoted this ayah from the Quran. إِنَّ الصَّفَا وَالْمَرْوَةَ مِنْ شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ. And then he said, أَبْدَأُ بِمَا بَدَأَ اللَّهُ بِهِ. And he said this only once, the first time he approached Safa hill. And then went up Safa hill, and then when he went up past the peak of the hill until he was able to face the Kaaba again, and then he stood facing the Kaaba, and he said dua. Yeah, so he praised Allah. One of the most common ways is to say takbir 3 times, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and then La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. La ilaha illallah wahdah anjaza wa'dah wa nasara 'abdah wa hazama al-ahzaba wahdah. 3 times is the sunnah, making a separate dua in between each one. So saying this and then a dua, and then this, and individual dua, and then this again, if possible. If it could be very crowded, so we might want to be a bit quick, but the sunnah is to say this 3 times with dua in between, insha'Allah. And then we go down Safa hill and walk towards Marwa. So we walk between these 2 hills 7 times, Safa and Marwa, like we did 7 times around Kaaba. What we do? Yeah. Now between the 2 hills, there's a small section in the middle of that valley between the 2 hills, which is indicated by green lights to make it clear for us. Where it is sunnah, we are encouraged for men to walk briskly like we did in the first 3 laps of tawaf. Yeah. So we do our power walk. Yeah. In the area indicated by green lights. Yeah. There's green lights. And there's a few levels for this Safa area. There's a few different levels. And sometimes there's a different way that they give the indication. But it should be clear, between the 2 green lighted areas, this is where we do our power walk. So when we reach Marwa hill, the first lap is completed. So we go up to Marwa hill, and you'll see where everyone else is going to make their dua, and we say the same dua again. Allahu Akbar 3 times, La ilaha illallah, that same dua that we said before, 3 times with our own dua, and then we come back down and walk back towards Safa. And do the same thing between the green lights, we do our power walk again. Ramal. Yeah. So we reach Safa hill again. The second lap is complete. So unlike Hajar Aswad, we must begin and end from Hajar Aswad. Safa, Marwa, Safa is not 1 lap, but it's 2 laps. So Safa, Marwa is 1, Marwa, Safa is 2. We repeat 7 laps ending at Marwa. So start from Safa, end at Marwa. Not the other way around. If we're counting 7 and we're in Safa, that means we've miscounted. Safa is, we start from Safa, 7 odd. So all the odd number is in Marwa. 1, 2. Yeah. Marwa 3, Safa 4. So the odd numbers in Marwa, even numbers back in Safa, 7 ending at Marwa. So Marwa is where we end, and if you go outside, you'll see lots of places there saying that you can cut your hair. So this is a little bit, here are some pictures of what to expect of what it's like in the Sa'i area. So there's a few levels, and each level is pretty similar. The width is a few meters wide each way, and don't go against the direction. You'll just cause an accident, and probably you'll be the one that would not be happy at the end of it. So just go with the flow. Same with tawaf or sa'i, do not go against the traffic. Go with the flow. Yeah. Go with the flow, so you'll be in the correct lanes. So in the green lighted area, people are doing their ramal. They're still, and you can see them wearing their ihram garments. Men and women can walk together in this area just like in tawaf. Yeah, just like in tawaf. So when we do our sa'i, it must be stopped to perform salah, just like tawaf. Yeah. It's permissible to talk during sa'i. It's recommended not to do in large groups. You will see large groups, different countries, they have large groups, they're like chains, 100 people. It's very dangerous. It's dangerous for everyone else. Because they're afraid, they don't want to get mixed up, they don't want to get lost from their group. We recommend not to be like that. We want everyone to be confident. There's no need to do that. Just let people walk in front of you and then you join the group again. There are some big groups, massive groups, they don't want to separate. But it's dangerous for other people. So try not to do that. For sa'i, if you lose your wudu, you do not have to have wudu for sa'i. For tawaf, yes, we have to have wudu, but sa'i, we do not have to have wudu. And there's no special supplication during sa'i, except for when we're at Safa and Marwa. So we do not have to say dhikr, there's no special dhikr that we have to say. You will see some groups saying big dhikr together, that's up to them. But we do not have to say any special dhikr or dua when we are making sa'i, except for when we are at Safa and Marwa hill and we face the Kaaba. That's what's mentioned in the Sunnah. So the Umrah, we've done our Ihram at the Miqat, we do our Tawaf and Sa'i, and then all we need to do then is cut our hair and we are out of Ihram. So we cut our hair and our Umrah will be complete. So for males, it is best, if possible, to shave our heads bald. But it's enough just to cut some of our hair for men. For females, it's encouraged if they have, for sisters who have long hair, for example, just need to gather it all together, and then at the back, at the bottom, just cut about 2 centimeters or about 1 inch off the end. And this will invalidate our ihram. So this is for the tamattu' pilgrims only. Tamattu' pilgrims only. And that's what makes it easy for us. Once we've cut our hair, we can go back to our hotel room. If we cut our hair outside, otherwise we go back to our hotel room and cut our hair, and maybe we cut our hair in the hotel. But once our hair is cut, then we can get back to normal, have a shower, wear normal clothing, wear perfume, everything back to normal. And we wait for about a week. We wait until the 8th of Dhul Hijjah to perform Hajj. So that might be about 1 week or so, maybe more. So that's where we're up to now, and it's almost time for, it's getting close to the time for Azan for Maghrib here in Sydney. So for our brief talk today, we've been able to get up to where we complete our Umrah, and then we wait for a bit over a week in Mecca. So we wait for about a week, we move a few days before Hajj begins, so maybe roughly about the 5th of Dhul Hijjah normally is the time that we would move. The 5th or 6th of Dhul Hijjah perhaps, we move from our hotel in Mecca to apartment accommodation in Azizia or Shisha area, which is close to the Jamarat usually. And we wait until the Hajj begins. And that will be our next discussion in our next meeting about what's involved in the days of Hajj. So what is remaining is a much shorter, less content than what we've discussed so far. Of course, there are many more details that could be discussed with what we went through already, but it's already taken us a couple of hours to get to where we are. So that's a brief rundown of how we begin our Hajj by performing Umrah. And I haven't mentioned the Hajj days yet. So that will be in our next meeting. So as we get close to time to prepare for the Adhan of Maghrib, for anyone who would like to discuss about briefly after the Salah about the package inclusions, and if anyone has any questions about the Sunshine Australia Travel Hajj Group package inclusions, and anything about your flights or bookings or any requests, then inshallah we can continue for maybe 10 minutes or so after Maghrib Salah, inshallah. So I'll end it here, so it allows time for us to go and make wudu. Again, for brothers and sisters, tea and coffee is available. You can always help yourself. After Maghrib, please don't be in a rush to go. We can have tea or something together, and a brief discussion about the Hajj package inclusions before we end the day. So I'll end it here for now, as it's almost time for Adhan. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Yes, sir. It's English. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا